Hey friends, Ash here with Gents with another fragrance rotation video. As you can tell by the title of the video, these fragrances are fragrances that work really well in colder weather. Lately where I live, the temperature has been frigid. It's been getting down to around 11 degrees, 10 degrees Fahrenheit, so sub-freezing temperatures. So I've been going with some bomb winter fragrances lately, ones that are strong, that are gonna cut through the cold. Some of these fragrances I'm gonna feature today are stronger than others, but each one of these is good in their own way for wintertime. So I've got 7 different fragrances to go over with you guys today. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. First up is a Parfums de Marly fragrance, one that I've not talked about on this channel for a long time now. It's this one, Gents. Assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's this one, you know what I'm talking about. This one has benzoin, vanilla, tonka, cinnamon, and honey as some of the main notes in the fragrance. And yeah, I guess I am wearing a coat and a beanie right now just to signify to you guys that it has in fact been cold. I figured I might as well go ahead and bring that up because otherwise somebody was going to bring it up in the comments, so I'm getting ahead of the curve. This fragrance gets compared to Hermes Ombre Narguilé. So if you're aware of that fragrance, if you're familiar with that fragrance, then you're gonna have a decent idea of how this one smells because it does come across like it's in the same family with the Hermes. Honestly though, you could probably tell that right away just looking at the notes. I mean, the note breakdown here would lead you to believe that this is a very warm, sweet, and spicy fragrance. And that's exactly what it is, actually. It opens up with that honey and cinnamon and dries down to feature the ambery, vanilla, and tonka notes. It's a fragrance that also has kind of a cinnamon apple pie feeling to it. I know that the fragrance that most often gets compared to an apple pie is Boss Bottled, but I would say that this fragrance takes that cinnamon apple pie kind of feeling even further, and obviously the quality of this fragrance far exceeds the Boss Bottled. Also, I should say this is not a clone of Boss Bottled, like a high-class clone, just that they share that common similarity. It's a fragrance that's going to really appeal to the gourmand lovers out there, the people that love those very warm, rich, and sweet fragrances. And like lots of other Parfums de Marly releases out there, this one has great performance. So you're gonna get above average longevity, above average projection. All of those things combined make this a solid cold weather fragrance. And right now, with how the temperature has been, this one was a great reach. Up next is a newer Parfums vintage release that I was sent, and I wanted to try this out, see how it is. This one is named Senses Obliteres, and I have no clue if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Actually, I would say I'm most likely not. But you can see here in the text of how it's spelled, and if you're better at French than I am, then you know how it should sound. Apologies if I'm sounding stuffy right now. I'm not sure how it's coming across on camera. The weather's kicking my butt a little bit. This one has incense, oud, amber, and leather, and this is supposed to be Parfums Vintage's take on Amouage Interlude Man, or more specifically, their take on a more wearable version of Interlude Man. It's a little bit fresher in the opening than Interlude is. It's got that tiny touch of bergamot, so a little bit of citrus, and then a pop of spice. Ultimately though, this fragrance is going to be about the incense, the leather, the oud, the balsamic resins, just like Interlude Man is. And even though this is supposed to be a more wearable take on Interlude Man, it is definitely still a winter fragrance through and through. This is not something that's wearable in spring or summer, in my opinion. And like Interlude Man, it comes across more like a nighttime fragrance to me. Something, again, when it's really cold out, wind is whipping around, something like that. The quality here is really good. It smells very nice, and in my opinion, at least based off of my first wearing, it does pull off what they're trying to accomplish, which again is taking Interlude Man and smoothing it out a little bit, adding just a tiny touch of freshness to it to make it more wearable, having it be slightly less aggressive, if you will. Performance on that one, very good. Another one that cuts right through the cold, one that I only need a couple of sprays and I'm good to go for all day. Up next is a Gucci fragrance, one that I reviewed a couple of years ago, but haven't really talked about very much since then. This fragrance, Gucci Guilty Absolute. It has leather, woody notes, patchouli, vetiver, and cypress as the notes in the fragrance. Now this one is a fragrance that a lot of you out there are going to call one stinky boy. I've dug this one since it first came out, but a lot of people don't agree with how I view this fragrance at all. A lot of people are gonna say that they absolutely hate the medicinal kind of vibe that it gives off. It gets compared to the smell of a Band-Aid in the opening. It has kind of a petrol-y kind of vibe to some people, kind of like gasoline. This fragrance has a powerful leather note, and it is very masculine. It's an uber masculine fragrance, and Gucci Guilty Absolute is the type of scent that honestly doesn't really care if you like it or not. Of course, you have all those other woody notes in there, including just generic woody notes to go along with the vetiver and the cypress, and then you have a kind of earthy patchouli in the base of the scent. It is a very powerful fragrance, and it is not made to be a hyper versatile, people-pleasing, compliment-getting kind of fragrance. Now, can you pull compliments with this if you wear it with authority, with confidence? Yeah, you can. Also, assuming the right person is smelling it, because Gucci Guilty Absolute, again, not going to be for everybody. That being said, I have always liked the way that this one smells, and I really enjoy that it takes the Gucci Guilty line and does something completely different, completely out of left field. This fragrance has essentially nothing to do with anything else in the Gucci Guilty line. To me, this one smells of very high quality, the performance is great, awesome longevity, awesome projection, and it's one that you could wear formally if you wanted to as well. Again though, if you're gonna wear it, you're gonna have to wear it with confidence, otherwise this fragrance is going to wear you. I'm fully aware that that one is divisive and a lot of people do not like it, they can't stand the opening and they don't care for the dry down. But for me, that one is sick. So I had to pick it up and give it a wear. Gucci Guilty Absolute. With this next fragrance, we're going from hyper masculine to metrosexual. The next fragrance in this rotation, Dior Homme Intense. Vetiver, cedar, pear, ambrette, lavender, and iris are some of the main notes, iris being the most important of those. Dior Homme Intense is a modern classic at this point. It really is. And I actually hadn't worn this or even smelled it for a decent amount of time before wearing it in this rotation. And I've got to tell you, coming back and smelling this again after having a decent amount of time in between the last time I had worn it, it blew me away again. Every time I come back to it and give it a smell, I'm always just like, wow, that smells so good. It has an extremely sophisticated, classy, refined, lipsticky iris note. Makeup-y iris is how it's sometimes referred to, and that mixes in with the ambrette, the lavender, and the woody notes as the fragrance dries down. I know that Dior Homme Intense is not for everybody, because not every guy out there likes wearing fragrances that are centered around iris, though I do have another iris-based fragrance coming up after this one. But for me, this one is fantastic. I love this fragrance. In fact, Dior Homme Intense was the very first fragrance I ever reviewed on this channel. I think that video is still private. At some point I did a reaction video to that first review, basically just because it was so cringy. But yeah, first review I ever did, Dior Homme Intense, and the reason is because I love it. I hold it in extremely high regard. Performance is great, quality is great, presentation is great. To me, this is just an absolute stunner of a fragrance. Dior Homme Intense. I love that one. Like I said, another iris fragrance coming up, but this one a little bit different than the last one. This is Prada L'Homme Intense. This one has amber, leather, tonka, and iris as some of the main notes. This one I wore because my wife loves it, and she asked me to wear it, so I did. So yeah, another intense fragrance, Prada L'Homme Intense, Dior Homme Intense, and another iris fragrance, one right after the other. This one is different though. It's got a fresher take on the iris. It doesn't come across as much like lipstick or makeup. This one is more of a soapy kind of iris. The longevity is good on Prada L'Homme Intense, though I would say the projection is less than each of the 4 fragrances that I've featured so far in this rotation. That being said, it's still a great cold weather fragrance, especially as this one dries down and the leather starts to come out more. The leather here though is not at all a dirty leather, it's not a funky leather. Like I said before, this one is more of a soapy, kind of clean, but at the same time still dark fragrance. This one is also quite versatile, and I would say out of the fragrances I've featured so far, actually I'm looking at these fragrances, probably out of all of them, it's the most versatile, and it's also a big compliment getter as well for myself. It's a great fragrance, one of the best in the Prada L'Homme line, if not the best, Prada L'Homme Intense. We're down to our last 2 fragrances in this rotation. The next one is a powerful Montale fragrance. This one is one of my absolute favorite Montale releases. To me, this is a really good beginner's oud, at least as far as the Montale line is concerned. Because if you're familiar with Montale, you'll know that a lot of their fragrances are based around oud. And sometimes Montale Oud can be very screechy, very in your face, and can turn people off that aren't aware of how oud smells or how it comes across. You know, people that aren't really familiar with oud as a note in fragrances. The one that I'm talking about here is Montale Honey Oud, or Honey Aoud. This has leather, vanilla, amber, cinnamon, oud, and honey. And it probably won't come as too much of a surprise for you, but this has really good performance. I mean, it is a Montale, it is based off of oud, so you would probably expect that, but I'm just letting you know. It has powerful projection, it has great longevity. And that also means that this is basically, for me anyway, a cold weather only kind of fragrance. This is one that I bust out when it starts to snow, basically. When you first spray this one on, you may not like it too much, because in the very initial opening, the oud has kind of a medicinal feeling to it. Again, like I said, sometimes Montale Ouds can come across screechy, and in the opening, Honey Aoud can be a little bit off-putting, especially if you don't know what to expect. But as it dries down, it gets so good. Honey Aoud smells fantastic as it dries down. The combination here of sweet honey, amber, and vanilla working in with the harsher notes of oud and leather just works so well. You also have this little pleasant cinnamon spice that works in with all those other notes that really ties everything together nicely with a bow. As it dries down, the oud is not loud, it's not in your face, which again makes this more approachable, more wearable, and more versatile than most Montale Oud fragrances. Like I said, if you're a beginner and you're trying to get into oud fragrances, and maybe you're looking at Montale because they have so many different oud selections to pick from, this one, Honey Aoud, my favorite oud fragrance from Montale, and I think an easy choice for beginners trying to get into oud, at least as far as Montale is concerned. It's gonna be a little bit challenging, but not too much, and it's still wearable. That's gonna take me to the final fragrance in this rotation, one I haven't talked about in a long time, but it's a fragrance that I think is really nice, and it's Tom Ford Noir Extreme. It has nutmeg, amber, cardamom, vanilla, and kulfi as some of the main notes. This one is warm, spicy, and sweet, and the note that gets talked about the most from this fragrance is going to be that kulfi note. If you're unfamiliar with what that is, it's an Indian dessert that's creamy and ice cream-like. Some of the more popular flavors of that dessert include saffron, cardamom, and rose, and that actually works in really well because those three notes are also notes in this fragrance. So it kind of all just jibes together there. Noir Extreme has powdery facets along with sweetness, spices, and woods with a little bit of a gourmand edge. It's a really nice cool and cold weather fragrance, though this one is not as loud as most of the other ones that I've talked about today. It sits a little bit closer to the skin than some of these other monsters, though that's not really a bad thing. One of the most appealing things of Tom Ford Noir Extreme, at least to me anyway, is that it's a very unique fragrance. At least until you compare it to Tom Ford Noir Pour Femme, which it does share a similarity to. Essentially, that's the women's take on this fragrance. They share a lot of notes between the two, especially that kulfi note that we talked about before. Noir Extreme is a classy, expensive smelling fragrance. Again, something that kind of stands off on its own and was a really good way to wrap up this rotation. So there we go. 7 fragrances that are great in the winter time. Some of these were fragrances that I hadn't busted out for a long time, and with that temperature dropping down, it was a great opportunity to reach for some of these bad boys. Alright guys, let me know in the comments below which of these fragrances is your favorite. Also let me know what you're wearing, and let me know if it's sub-freezing temperatures where you are. As always guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Thanks for all your support, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys.